Welcome back to the Carlisle Med Gym for week 5 of our hip mobility series. We've been honing in on some hip mobility drills that you can do right now from home to improve some of the self-assessments that we gave you right off the bat as we started this series. And again, our focus on this is really to improve hip mobility with a focus of improving spine health, low back health, and knee health, those joints above and below the hips that tend to get thrown under the bus if you don't have adequate hip mobility. So if you were limited on any of the self-assessments we started off with, these are going to be great drills for you to work on and keep working on so you can get up to at least an adequate level of hip mobility in all these ranges of motion. So last week we worked on a half kneeling hip flexor stretch, and that was really to work on the muscles on the front of the leg and the hip to get the hip into extension. And so we've been focusing in on our active straight leg raise test off the bat, which was, if you recall, laying flat on the ground. One leg goes into flexion, one leg remains in extension, and you have to have mobility in both flexion and extension to be able to do that successfully. Another self-assessment we started off with was a Thomas test, which is laying on a table or on a bed with one leg hugged up to your chest and dropping the other hip into extension. So if you're limited in any of those motions, you're really going to struggle when it comes to any more exaggerated hip flexion and extension activities like running, climbing stairs, or even walking it to a certain degree. So we want to work on another drill today that can get you to better hip mobility and flexion and extension. And we're going to go right down here on the mat to a leg lock bridge. So let me set up here on the mat. I'm going to show you two variations. The first one's a little bit easier, but basically we're going to take this leg, hug it up to your chest, and so we're maintaining flexion on one leg, and we're going to bridge up into extension on the down leg. So you're holding this tight to your body, driving up through the hip, squeezing the glute muscle of this down leg, and getting that flexion and maintaining that flexion on the top leg as you extend the bottom leg. So this starts to exaggerate a little bit of the hip flexion and extension, as well as force you to engage some of these muscles here to drive into extension as you maintain the top leg up. So we're working on that. If that's not too hard for you, you can challenge yourself a little more by taking a lacrosse ball, a tennis ball, or any kind of implement here that you can place right at the base of your rib cage and give you a little bit of feedback that you're maintaining the hip flexion all the way up. So as soon as you bridge up, if you lose that hip flexion, that ball's going to run away from you. So I want to just give you a little feedback, pin that ball right up to your stomach underneath the rib cage, drive up without losing that. If you're getting pretty good at that, you can even go without hands. Now you have to actively pull that leg up without holding it with your hands. So a few progressions on that leg lock bridge that can really put an emphasis on hip flexion and hip extension. And again, with the focus on improving that to be able to do things like walking, running, stair climbing without throwing the knees or the low back under the bus.